Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Chamber Talk Show. Hello, doctors. How are you?
Great.
Hello.
Good.
Doing well.
It's so great to see you ladies today, and one gent. Thank you, Dr. Dwayne, for joining in with us. We have Dr. April Gibbons as well as Dr. Kristen Ross. And of course, this is part 2 of Breakup Chronicles, and we know that there's a lot of impact when it comes to mental health when people talk about breakup. So I'm going to get right into it. We've had part 1. We talked about breaking up in a friendly way. Today, I don't know, maybe not so friendly. What do you guys say about breakups mentally? How can they impact you? What do you guys say?
Well, I'll start it off. For me, I've seen a lot of fear and anxiety associated with breakups. In my office, I can relate to a couple that came to see me for actual marriage therapy, but they were really dealing with anxiety. And one of the primary issues was, one, they didn't have the finances. Well, the man didn't have the finances because he wasn't interested in the woman anymore. The woman wanted to go to date nights, and date nights were limited, intimacy were limited. And now she was having anxiety due to the fact that he wasn't doing the things he wanted to do anymore. So a lot of her anxiety was geared towards the fact that he really didn't want to be with her anymore. The behavior didn't match what he said he wanted to do, and now she's starting to have some fear. So they ended up breaking up, and so I see a lot of anxiety associated with fear of breaking up, and then just not seeing the same behaviors that they were used to when they started to date or to marry.
Okay, so sometimes they're not so friendly. Dr. April, we know you have a lot of clients that have experienced some of this. Tell us about some of your experiences.
Well, it sounds to me like Dr. Dwayne was kind of describing some of the clients that I have that have been going through, narcissistic abuse. So it's the gaslighting, it's the love bombing, it's the trauma bonding, like things like that. Because when you start out one way initially, and then later on, you just kind of stop. It's just the person ghosts you. So we've been getting a lot of that lately, where people are just completely heartbroken and devastated because, they are starting out with this person and they're thinking that this could be potentially the love of my life. And then later on, maybe after a month or two, something changes and the person doesn't keep up the facade, so to speak, of what they were saying and doing initially in the beginning.
Right.
Can we mentally prepare for a breakup? Dr. Kristen, talk about that.
So I think it just kind of depends, right, on your previous experiences. I think that a lot of taking care of yourself. I think a lot of times people start to get fearful. Is anyone ever going to be, willing to be in a relationship with me? Is it me? And I think that if we work on ourselves and cultivate our self-care and who we are as a person, that can be some peace, if you will, in a sense of like there's not as much as ambiguousness going on.
Okay, so we've talked about preparing for breakups. Let's think about if we look at it, hindsight 2020, I think we've all had maybe a few funny stories. Can you guys think of some times where you look back and you said, wow, this was a crazy breakup, but now it's funny? Dr. Dwayne, can you share?
Oh, yeah. I had a friend that I just knew she was the one, but she wasn't. Some of the red flags for me was the fact that, she wouldn't keep her appointments on time or date nights weren't at the same time. She didn't return the phone calls as consistently as I thought she should, coupled with the fact that, she was at place A when she told me she was at place B. So some of these red flags, I think we kind of have a hunch for something not being right. And again, we just have to prepare for the fact that she ain't the one or he ain't the one, but something's not right with what we're feeling. And we just need to be real with the fact that something's just not lining up. So I've experienced that, and, I had to pull back, pull away and let that one go.
Right. I agree. I think it's important for us to not talk ourselves out of our common sense. When we're in relationships, a lot of times you want it to work so bad, you're not, you don't look at it for what it is. You're like, okay, what's going on here? Well, is it this? Okay, well, maybe this. And then you start to make excuses for the person instead of seeing it for exactly what it is. So I think that's important for all of us to understand, okay, what we see in reality in front of us, take heed to that.
Right.
I love it. I love it. Exactly. So basically you're saying, look at the red flags in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. In front of you.
Okay. All right. So we do have some guests coming on today, and they're going to actually share some of their experiences. We have Christina. She's coming on to talk a little bit about some of her past experiences, as well as Ty Witt. He's going to talk about it. And we're going to let them share what they feel has actually been, in some instances, a blessing in disguise. Okay. So Christina is here. Okay. So hi, Christina. How are you?
Hello. How are you, doctors?
We're doing well. Let's talk about, if you can give us maybe a rundown of some of your past experiences, talking about a time where you've looked back and you've really had no regret in moving forward from a past experience.
That is a loaded question. I think if you, in my age and also in experience, sometimes you date the same person, not realizing that the outcome will be the same. And then you have to self-reflect and ask yourself, why am I choosing this person, or why am I allowing myself to be chosen? Some people, what they call, they have like long-term dating, or some people want to just have fun and, how to say, kick it. I would probably say, and I am divorced, so and each relationship is different. Your needs change, your expectations change. When it's over, for women and men who have gone through their process of emotions, feelings, expressions, whether you're using for fantasy, whether you're trying to figure out finances, it's really a relief. It is emotional. It does take its toll on you. I can say for me in my marriage, respectfully so, it wasn't that he wasn't a great guy. We were married young. There were some things that occurred that you really look at that wasn't healthy. And sometimes people don't particularly look at those pros and those cons, because they're looking at how they're helping the other person and not looking at how they're helping themselves. And I know that may sound selfish, but self-care is essential. And so when you have kids and everybody's working or in school, you're pretty much only focusing on like the household. But when you are miserable, and you're then you deal with in different levels, and sometimes women don't know that they're being emotionally abused, or verbally abused, or financially abused, or physically abused. It definitely takes its toll on your self-esteem, your self-confidence, and then a lot of times you become isolated. So once you go through your process of healing, because some people don't, what they call the rebound, that is not good. It's okay to go out with friends. It's okay to be around, not everyone, but family members. And if you're continuously having this same conversation, 6 months later, 4 months later, you may need some therapy. For me, I like long-term relationships, but you have to start it as friends. And I think now, as you mentioned earlier, what's going on now, a lot of people are not courting anymore. They're not dating anymore. It's love or lust. And with the lust, physical beauty, or is he handsome? What car does he drive? Where does he work? And so when you listen to those conversations, they're not really conversations of substance. They're, oh, so what do you do for a living? Because when you ask that question, then you're hearing income. Where do you live? What school did you attend? And sometimes it's just great to just know the person and their identity and, things about them. And as mentioned earlier, the red flags, sometimes we suppress or ignore because of our own expectations, and we're not being real with ourselves.
So I heard the word vanity. I don't know. It just jumped out at me when you said that. So I need one of the therapists to address that. Nowadays, you said a lot of it is about looks, It's about appearance and surface.
Mhm.
Okay, one of the doctors, Dr. April.
Oh,
Dr. Dwayne wanted to go. Go
Okay,
ahead.
Dr. Dwayne, jump on it. Jump on it.
You know, men, we are notoriously known for being very visual. I mean, we rely on what we see more often than what we hear sometimes. So the visual aesthetics of a woman can typically blind a man. But what I see a lot in our clinic will be men who are only looking from the outside, and their primary focus would be, you know, how does she look? How does she dress? What type of car does she drive? Will she walk this way? And those things are, in my mind, tertiary factors, but they're not secondary and they're not primary. And what I encourage men to look at is, what really do you want from a woman? And what I mean by that is, will she match you? Will she build you up? Will she understand when you come in from that long day at work? Will she have your back and empathize with you? Will she support you on your dreams? All these factors, in my opinion, will be first prior to anything visual, because if those things aren't there for a man over time, as we mature, we figure some things out, the relationship is not going to last. So the visuals are important to a degree, but in my mind, they are not primary, they're not secondary, they're tertiary.
Awesome.
And for the women too. We have long days too. I think a relationship is give and give and not give and take. If it's one-sided, then you're already in trouble.
Yeah, I think the looks get you in the door. So it's, the person has to be attractive. You have to be attracted to that person, whichever way. Even if it's not a physical attraction, you may be attracted to their personality, because some people may not be, all that attracted to you initially, or you're attracted to them initially by how they look. But the more and more you communicate with them, the more and more you talk to them, you start to maybe fall in love with their personality and how they make you feel and the humor. So then that gets you in the door, and then everything else, falls into place after that.
Okay.
I think it's kind of difficult, right? We're living in a world where we use a lot of dating apps. And so I think that really does play to that role of, the looks and what you see first. And so I think that can be really, especially for like millennials, that's often how they date. And so that can be a struggle.
Okay. I love it. I think.
Can I say this? I a lot of times when people are dating, they forget how to be friends, and they forget how to be consistent. And then so one party is being complacent while the other party is being complicit.
Okay. I love it. And I love the fact last time we heard from a male's perspective. And so we talked to Tyrone, and Tyrone talked about all of his breakups were friendly. But we know mentally all breakups are not friendly. Some breakups are nasty. Some breakups you have to walk through that process. And in some cases, you actually have to call on a therapist to help you get through those moments. Let's talk about that. Let's address that, please. Dr. Dwayne.
Well, I'm reflecting on a couple, and the one that comes to my mind the first was one that kind of ended physically, in a physical altercation. And the issue was it came back down to money. One person was debating who was going to take this amount of money, because I started a relationship with this contributing to the house or contributing to this. And the bottom line was the relationship needed to end. They needed an attorney, but what happened is the relationship turned sour and the woman began to hit the man, and unfortunately the man hit the woman back. But the bottom line was financing is money tends to contribute to very harsh feelings. And when those emotions get involved, as the couples are separating, there tends to be a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of anguish. And unfortunately, these situations can become violent. That's one of the most difficult situations that I've ran into, just the violence associated with it, and typically money is associated with it.
Okay. If I can piggyback off of that, I practice from an emotions-focused perspective, and I find that oftentimes what happens is we have now created an attachment injury that often reflects back to childhood, and so we start poking at our really raw places, and that just really sets a lot of people off. And it can start to get really nasty because now you know these sensitive things about me that other people don't know, and you really know how to hit those places that can cause a lot of pain and vulnerability.
Absolutely, I agree. I think it goes to codependency too. Sometimes you be with people for such a long time and then you become codependent on that other person. So if they, happen to leave, you're second guessing yourself because you're dependent on them for so many different things. So that can be really tough and devastating.
Okay. So as we actually move to a close, and thank you, Christina, and I'll actually have you come back and share some instances of situations coming up. But I would like to say that in some instances, breakups propel you into the next level in life. Like there's progress, like you learn from your past mistakes and you're able to move forward and have a healthier relationship. I'd like for one of the therapists to address that, and then I'm going to come back to you, Christina, so you can talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will.
Well, I think I'll start with that one because I'm a prime example of how a past breakup. I've probably had two significant, breakups that made me self-reflect and turn inward and really start working on me. The one when I dated a narcissist, that one definitely made me start going in and really figuring out exactly what self-love was. So I really started to tap into self-love and started to do things that made me happy and turn my focus more inward instead of focusing on, being loved by someone else. So that can definitely, being in a relationship, those are catalysts because a lot of times they're mirrors. You're with someone and all it does is reflect back on you what you need to be working on within yourself. So I always say that, a lot of relationships are life lessons. Everybody comes into your life for a reason, and it's to help propel you and it's to help you grow. So just because you were with that person for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, it's never a waste of time. What did you learn from that? How have you grown as a result from being in that relationship with that person?
I love it. Okay. Christina, what has helped you grow in the past? I know you said you mentioned divorce. What has helped move you to the next level? What is your light at the end of the tunnel?
So the light at the end of the tunnel, a couple of things. As Dr. April, if I may, stated, in self-reflection, a lot of times women and men too, we think we know what self-love is based on what was given to us in their relationship. But when we self-reflect and relearn and revisit and reestablish what our standards are, what our security looks, our self-security and our self-stability looks like, then we learn how to, moving forward, when we are dating, where we're not going to accept or allow. And so you have to take time to ask yourself, why did I tolerate that? Why did I accept that? Why did I allow that? And sometimes what we think is a need or a want, we're really being needy. And again, as addressed with Dr. I want to say Christina, I'm sorry, I may have your name wrong. Trauma. A lot of times, those attachments. And you mentioned the 10-year, the 15-year, the 20-year. It's an investment, but a lot of times the first thing we do say is, oh, I wasted so much time, because you can't get your time back. But in that time, you learn on codependency. A lot of times when I was married, we had a young child, and codependency financially. And people tend to think that that's being a gold digger. No, when your husband or your wife is the breadwinner, and you're looking at, again, what your household looks like, we tend to tolerate more from a person because of what they're giving in that moment. And so the light at the end of the tunnel is you reestablish what your boundaries are. You reestablish what self-care really is, self-love really is. Because yes, you love yourself and you look good and you smell good and you're talking good, but inside you're completely empty. And so it's really important. The light at the end of the tunnel is to take time for self, grow from that, heal from that. Because if you haven't completely healed from whatever that circumstance was, you tend to, it's like a puzzle piece. You tend to take it into the next relationship, and you have to watch your own behaviors, your own actions, and your own decisions. And I tell people, keep a journal, write it down. When you hear yourself saying certain things and you go back and you look at that, if you sound controlling and demanding, it's because of whatever you didn't get in the previous relationship. You're insistent on building it with someone else when that other person may not be for you either. But you're trying to change the dynamics of that with that person when you need to be changing something within you. So I would say the light at the end of the tunnel is learning to breathe again. It's okay. And this may come out wrong with some of the viewers. It's okay to be hurt. Because in that hurt, you have to heal. You have to know that you're going to cry. You may cry a lot. You may get with your girlfriends, happy hour, whatever it looks like for you, something healthy, But if you're 6 months later and you're depressed and you're anxious and fearing and self-isolation, and you're attacking other people based on a past relationship, seek therapy. And it's okay to get therapy. Some people don't get therapy because they know what needs to be done. But some people, if you've been divorced or you've been in that last relationship and it's been 2 years, 3 years, and you're still having the same narrative and conversation, or you're still bumping your head, meeting the same type of people, then it's an internal issue.
Absolutely. And I love it because all I heard from that was therapy and being engaged in something healthy. And for me, that's working out, that's walking, that's biking. For some people, it's swimming. For some people, it's bowling. And some people, it's brunching, happy hour, whatever it is. So I love it. And that's actually what we stand for with the Chamber, a holistic approach to wellness. And you guys know that, and I talk about it all the time, being active, weight training for me, it's the best. But you've got to engage in some healthy activity. And that's what we look forward to. We really appreciate you coming on, Christina, and being transparent and talking about it. And as we actually move to a close, Dr. Dwayne, you heard her say therapy, healthy activities. What do you say to that?
I think anyone going through any type of separation will feel some form of trauma. It may not be to the point to where it's clinical, but it could be to the point to where you need to probably sit with someone and reevaluate what are your standards, what are your goals, some of those healthy habits that you talked about. Typically, folks, when we're divorcing or when we are separating, we typically have not done those things for ourselves. We tend to be so codependent on that other person. And when they leave us, we are in such a whirl of hurt that we don't know how to stand up again. So talking to someone and getting that feedback, analyzing how we could get back to who we really are, because when we truly want to reflect on who we are and start to shine and blossom, that second person will come along, but we'll be stronger, we'll be better, we'll have a better insight for what we want. But more importantly, though, we'll know this is what we will take and this is what we will not take in the future, which means we're going to set the appropriate boundaries, which means the likelihood of having a good relationship is greater.
I love it. Such a great male perspective. Thank you, Christina, for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on. And
thank you for having me.
For some of the instances. Okay, doctors, as we move to a close, we heard her story. We talked to gentlemen last week. It seemed that they weren't as deep as the female guest on the show. Dr. April, you were there. What can you say to that?
Well, well, of course, for me, counseling men individually, I think that they, don't look at things sometimes as deep. It's just like, okay, we see it. This is what happened. It ended. Okay, now let me kind of press on. But the woman, she's more of in her head, overthinking, overanalyzing, thinking she's going to be by herself for the rest of her life because this relationship ended. The clock is clicking, the clock is ticking. I don't have that much time. Like all these things. So it's good to get different perspectives.
Why is it that is how we think? Like, oh my gosh, like what next? Like, I'm a creature of habit, so I don't like change. Once I get to know you, I'm like, okay, let me just try to figure this out. But in some instances, that's very unhealthy. It's time to push past that, move forward, propel ourselves forward, see progress, and go from there. So as we move to a close, I'm going to let you guys have closing statements before we go to Dr. April and your affirmation. All right, Dr. Dwayne, what do you have to say?
All right. Men and women, we're wired differently, but that doesn't mean that we don't suffer from the same issues. As Dr. April indicated, that women tend to be a little bit more deeper or into their emotions. Men, we sometimes are very superficial, which means we sometimes don't get the help. I would encourage everybody either go through a coaching perspective, or if it's to the point where it's clinical, get some therapeutic support, but get help, because breakups, and they impact mental health, and they impact your ability to be successful coupled with your ability to bounce back. I just hate to see people get into a relationship, break up, and then repeat, spin, wash the same cycle over and over and over again. They're not learning. And I think, as one of the guests indicated earlier, learning is the key, but more importantly, being a better person is also the key. But we have to take a moment and get that help, just like going to the gym, working on that chest, working those abs. You got to put the work in. So that's all therapy is, putting the work in.
Got it. All right, Dr. Ross.
So I work with veterans and first responders, which tend to typically be men. And so I see them as individuals and couples. And the thing that I notice is the social stigma of men not being able to share their feelings, to really get in touch with those feelings. And so I really, like Dr. Dwayne said, I really encourage you to get therapy. You don't have to really be going through a lot to go to therapy. You go to the doctor for a minor infection. Therapy is kind of the same, right? We should be checking in pretty regularly because we're trained to talk and work with people and help them process things that sometimes society doesn't let you, process out loud.
Right.
All right. I love it. I love everything that you guys have said. I really appreciate it. Christina was great in being transparent and talking to us about some of her past truths. As we close, Dr. April, your closing thoughts as well as an affirmation for us, because Dr. April closes all of our shows with affirmations.
Well, I think the other two doctors summed it up as far as, reaching out for therapy. That's important. So I'll go ahead with my affirmations. I'm going to leave you guys with two this time. So the first one is, I am worthy of love even when my heart is hurting. So I am worthy of love even when my heart is hurting. And the other one is, I am loving, peaceful, joyful person. I am loved and lovable.
I love it.
Nice.
I am lovable. That's what I heard most. I am lovable. In spite of some difficult ways that I have, I am lovable. All right. So we definitely appreciate you guys. This is part 2 of Breakup Chronicles. We know it has an impact on us all mentally. And sometimes even physically, it manifests physically whenever we've had breakups and we've had issues to happen. But we definitely appreciate Christina and all of you doctors, Dr. Dwayne, Dr. Kristen, Dr. April. Thank you so much. And we appreciate you guys for joining us as well. So we would like to say have a great evening.